Hi everyone. In today's video, I just wanted to talk about um something based on a class that I took that I recently finished the text for. It was a Christian existential psychology class based on uh the psychological works of Soren Kierkegaard, primarily um the concept of anxiety and the sickness unto death. Um, and just to give a little introduction to the text, the first one, um, the concept of anxiety is basically um about as the title says anxiety, but specifically more of the inner mental state of the anxious person and how it's related to the freedom of choice of, you know, being a human being and being able to choose to do things, either a right thing or a wrong thing, and how that relates to um original sin, the sin of Adam and Eve. Um and the sickness unto death is more it's related, right? But it's um more talks about despair, which comes after anxiety, when you you have to do things or commit yourself to um an action in the outside world, and how it manifests itself in a person's life. So they both have to do with mental states, but one sort of the first book stays almost exclusively in the mind, um and the second book comes out of the mind a little bit more into the real world, if that makes sense. And what I really wanted to talk about, one big theme in both books, is this idea of having a pure, genuine, faithful heart, and being able to quote unquote die to the world. Um and this is sort of a very interesting concept. You hear that term get thrown around in Christian circles so much, but no one really, you know, tries to say what exactly that means. Oh, well, they say, oh, that just means you have to have faith. You can't worry about, um, you know, what life throws at you and all of this stuff. And that's true. That's one part of it. But it's also something much deeper than that, right? It's about not caring about any external thing, not caring about praise from other people, not caring about money, not caring about fame, not caring about any of that stuff, which, you know, people in quote the real world, right, would say makes a good life. Um and honestly, I was really reminded of the the original formulation of the golden rule in the Gospels in Mark, because although Mark is the second Gospel chronologically, it was the first one written. And yeah, I just, the one in Mark is special to me. I know it's in Matthew 16 or 19, and then Luke 10. Um, but but the one in Matthew, I mean Mark, is special to me because it includes a fuller dialogue between Christ and the scribe, right? When he's telling him the first commandment is, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your mind and with all your strength. Um, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself," right? He responds and says, "Wow, Rabbi, you're so right about that." Um, and all that is much more important than every burnt offering, every sacrifice. Um, and again, that's just, people miss that. People miss that, right? Because especially the more established churches with a lot of hierarchies, um, right? They think, oh, by just doing the thing, doing however many Hail Marys, however many Paternosters, right? They're gonna, that's what faith is. That's what Christianity is. But that couldn't be further from the truth, because at that point you're just doing something to do it. You don't really care about what it means. You don't feel it in your heart that this is changing you. And I mean, I just think that's so important, right? We can't let our religious rituals become like transactions at a bank. Like, oh, you go up to the lady, right? Or the man, and you're like, "Oh, I need you to help me do this." And she's like, "Oh, no problem, sir. Here's your money." Or you give them money back, right? Like, you, it needs to come from in here. And that's really with anything, right? Another example that I'll give is, most of my viewers are pretty young, they'll understand this reference, but another example would be, um, like in SpongeBob, when Mr. Krabs falls, like, love at first sight for Mrs. Puff, right? And, um, what does he do? He gets SpongeBob to, like, buy her all these gifts and stuff like that, and he won't stop. He won't stop for one moment of a single day, right? Like basically he's a simp. Mr. Krabs is a simp, or was a simp in that episode. And um but it's, what he's doing is not wrong just because he's taking advantage of SpongeBob, but because in reality, it shows a lack of faith and trust in Mrs. Puff, in, the security of their relationship, because Mr. Krabs thinks that by buying her all these gifts and like worrying about what's on the outside so much, money and stuff like that, that that's what's gonna get Mrs. Puff to wanna be with him more, right? But that's not, or at least it's what shouldn't matter. I know that it does, right? But the thing is, and Mr. Krabs admits it, SpongeBob admits it, but Mr. Krabs was talking about this and everything, right? But he wasn't really talking about what's in here. What he wasn't really concerned with what was in Mrs. Puff's heart. He really was not. And but that's just an example with love, but it goes for anything, right? Like, it's not that the rituals or gift giving or whatever is wrong. The difference is that you genuinely want to do it and you feel in your heart that it's important, and that's what Mark 12 and that's what Kierkegaard is talking about. And I have to say what you will about evangelicals, and there is certainly a lot to say about them, but as for the strength of their faith and their commitment to it, even if you don't agree with its manifestations, that's something that you have to admire. And I do admire it because they really do seem genuine. Okay, thanks guys for listening to me ramble on purity of heart.